Those who live in Malta have become intrigued by the Luigi Mangione case, which has evolved into a complex investigation of betrayal, ambition, and justice. This investigation has captivated the people of Malta. During the course of a trial that is being held for the gruesome murder of the chief executive officer of a prominent hospital, Mangione, a well-respected individual who is now suspected of perpetrating a horrific crime, takes the stand. The chief executive officer of the hospital was killed in a gruesome manner. The initial impression was that it was a tragic and isolated tragedy. However, it has now transformed into a fascinating courtroom drama, revealing tensions that had been concealed in the past and unraveling a web of lies that has horrified the nation throughout the entire country. The homicide caused shockwaves to travel throughout the neighborhood as a result of the effects of the murder. They were well known for their remarkable contributions to the modernization of healthcare systems, as well as the positive impact they had on the lives of countless individuals all over the world. The victim was a pioneer in the field of healthcare, and they were well known for their contributions. Due to the fact that they were murdered in a manner that was both mysterious and horrific, a tremendous hole has been left behind as a result of their deaths. Consequently, this has led to feelings of both grief and wrath as a consequence of the scenario. As the authorities began their investigation, the trail led to Luigi Mangione as the primary suspect. The nature of the attack suggested that it was something that was significantly more personal than random acts of violence, and during this time the authorities began their investigation. It had been asserted that their professional relationship had become tense over the course of the preceding few months, with conflicts and tensions growing to a greater degree. This was made clear by the fact that they had been arguing with each other. As a consequence of these events, the relationship that Mangione had with the victim was shrouded in a cloud of ambiguity. The evidence that Mangione was responsible for started to build as the inquiry progressed, and its conclusions were discovered. This occurred concurrently with the course of the investigation. At the scene of the crime, forensic teams discovered a number of physical traces, including blood stains that matched his DNA. These traces were found within the crime scene. Furthermore, surveillance footage from the surrounding areas revealed the presence of a person who resembled Mangione in the vicinity of the location on the evening of the murder. This information was obtained from the surveillance footage. A further piece of evidence that indicates Mangione was present in the region throughout the significant period of time was provided by the geolocation data that was collected from his mobile device. This data was collected from his mobile device. Among the digital evidence that was found, there were emails and text messages that suggested that Mangione and the victim had been becoming increasingly antagonistic toward one another over a prolonged argument involving funds. This was suggested by the fact that the argument had been going on for a considerable amount of time. It was clear from these communications that the argument had been going on for a considerable amount of time all along. In accordance with the findings of the investigation, Mangione was determined to be the individual who was most likely to be responsible for the crime. The investigators believed that these particulars provided evidence of a reason for the murder. The legal team that is representing Mangione, on the other hand, has presented the argument that these allegations are not true. It was suggested that the forensic evidence might have been tainted, which led to the expression of concerns regarding the reliability of the evidence. Additionally, they said that the surveillance footage did not provide a conclusive identification of the person who was under investigation. In addition, the defense made an effort to contextualize the digital communications by arguing that the fact that they were delivered did not always mean that the sender intended to engage in violent behavior. When seen from their perspective, the prosecution's case was founded on circumstantial evidence and relied mostly on interpretations. Nevertheless, there was no concrete proof to indicate that Mangione was involved in the crime. Over the course of the presentation of their opposing arguments, both sides have transformed the courtroom into a theater for dramatic interactions. A complex picture of a guy who may have been driven to the edge of his powers by ambition or who was wrongly accused has been created as a result of the testimony of witnesses, which have presented a variety of perspectives on the character of Mangione. When Mangione took the stand, the primary focus of attention shifted to the impassioned testimony that he had presented. At the same time that he was portraying himself as a victim of circumstances and a target in a high-profile investigation, he vigorously denied the claims. He was a target of the investigation. Some people were moved by his tears and statements that came from the heart, while others remained skeptical and viewed his display as an attempt to influence the emotions of the jury. His show was a source of emotional distress for a number of people. What could possibly happen next? Stay tuned. We're about to reveal some unexpected gems that will captivate your imagination. Outside of the courtroom, the case has become a source of intrigue for individuals all throughout the country of all different backgrounds. On numerous social media sites, there has been an abundance of talks, arguments, and ideas concerning the possible motivations of Mangione and the quality of the material provided. The public's interest with the trial has been further fueled by the significant coverage that various news organizations have provided to the trial, which includes commentary from both legal and psychological specialists. Even though this enormous interest has brought attention to the complexities of the judicial process, it has also prompted concerns about the likelihood of biases and the difficulties of ensuring a fair trial in the middle of such extensive scrutiny. This is because of the fact that the judicial process is so complicated. In spite of the fact that the trial is drawing closer to its completion, the stakes persist in being exceedingly tough to deal with. Following an inconceivable amount of anguish that lasted for several months, the trial marks a last-ditch effort by the family of the victim to seek justice and put an end to their sorrow. The result will decide whether Mangione is awarded his release or if he is sentenced to spend the remainder of his life in prison. The verdict will also determine whether or not he is allowed his release. In addition, the conclusion will serve as a very important moment for the legal system of Malta. It will serve as a test of the system's ability to strike a balance between completing a comprehensive investigation and retaining impartiality and fairness in a case that is of such high profile. The trial of Luigi Mangione has expanded beyond its legal repercussions to become a narrative that portrays the intricacies of the human experience. This has occurred as a result of the trial's consideration of subjects such as trust, ambition, and the consequences of betrayal. The outcome of this case will not change the fact that it will leave an indelible mark, imparting valuable lessons about the precarious nature of relationships and the significance of maintaining integrity. This is something that will not change. This is something that will not alter, because it will continue to resonate as a profound illustration of the interaction between law, morality, and human emotion. There is no doubt that it will continue to be a subject of contemplation and debate for many years to come. This is because it will continue to be questioned and discussed. An unusual amount of preparation and planning was carried out by Mangione in the days leading up to the day that Thompson was murdered, which was December 4th, 2024. This was done in preparation for the event. That day, Thompson was taken from this world. On November 24th, Mangione set off on his voyage, initially departing from his apartment in Atlanta, Georgia, with the sole intention of carrying out his ambition to be as fatal as possible. He was determined to achieve his goal. Through the process of obtaining a false driver's license from the state of New Jersey, he initially attempted to disguise his identity. One of the first things that he did was this. As a result of this, he was able to travel freely around the country without running into any suspicions or being followed by any authorities. He did not have any reservations about his decision to travel by bus rather than by airplane. He made it on purpose and without any hesitation. His ability to avoid leaving a digital trail that may be associated with flying was a decision that he made that demonstrated his comprehension of the value of maintaining secrecy. He was able to do this because he was able to avoid leaving a digital trace. During the immediate aftermath of the event, Mangione was able to free himself. However, he was unable to take his electric bicycle with him as he vanished into the vast expanse of Central Park despite his best efforts. The park, which had a location that was cold and impersonal, served as his temporary safe haven in order to avoid the threat. Because of this, he was able to find a place to go before the authorities could get closer to him, which was essential for his life. Both the meticulous manner in which he flew and the fact that he disposed of his bicycle provided proof that Mangione had not only planned the killing, but also his own flight from the authorities. Both of these pieces of evidence were evidence at the same time. In addition, the fact that he got rid of his bicycle was included in the evidence that was presented, a significant indication of his dedication to the task and his ability to remain undisturbed by the upheaval that he had just produced was the manner in which he exited the room, which was composed and unruffled throughout the entirety of the transaction. In the beginning, the authorities were taken aback by the high-profile nature of the assassination, which resulted in the beginning of a large manhunt for Mangione. In spite of the fact that his name was kept a secret and his whereabouts were unknown, police worked painstakingly to piece together the patterns of behavior that he displayed to solve the case. After conducting an investigation that included the review of security footage, the gathering of forensic evidence, and the reconstruction of the journey that Mangione had taken from Georgia to New York, they were ultimately successful in locating the trail of evidence that he had left behind. Mangione continued to evade detection by utilizing his skill in surveillance tactics in order to keep one step ahead of the authorities. This was done in spite of the fact that the investigation was quite broad. However, it wasn't until December 9, 2024, that it was completely destroyed, which meant that his reign of terror could finally come to an end. The media articles that were published about the assassination led to the identification of Mangione by a careful employee at McDonald's, which ultimately resulted in his arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania. As a result of this investigation, Mangione was ultimately arrested and taken into custody. However, the evidence that law enforcement discovered on Mangione, more specifically, the weapon that was used to carry out the murder, provided proof that established beyond a reasonable doubt that he was involved in the crime. This was the case despite the fact that the arrest itself was not particularly remarkable. Mangione remained strangely silent and exhibited little resistance once he was taken, as if the weight of his acts had already been resolved in his mind. He appeared to exhibit little resistance. It seemed as though he had no intention of engaging in a battle. In his manner, he created the impression of having a complete understanding of the consequences that his actions would have with regard to them. The authorities finally discovered a manifesto that Mangione had written after he was brought into jail, but before they did so. The manifesto was a terrible piece of writing that shed light on his reasons for committing the violent act, as well as the psychological foundations that supported it. It was a booklet that detailed his motivations and shed light on them. Within the confines of this essay, Mangione offered an explanation of his ideological resistance to the corporate institutions that he considered to be oppressive. As far as he was concerned, individuals like Thompson were the ones who were accountable for the structural disparities that afflicted the nation. Not only did the contents of his manifesto reveal a significant amount of anger and a sense of alienation, but they also demonstrated a focus on bringing attention to the topics in which he personally believed. Even though the assassination was carried out, Mangione maintains that it was not only an act of personal retribution, but also an act of political resistance. He says this despite the fact that it was carried out. He was under the belief that by committing this crime, he would motivate other people to fight against the same forces that he had previously fought against. He was under this impression since he engaged in this criminal activity. A great lot of scrutiny has been applied to the subsequent legal processes, not only in the courtroom, but also in the court of public opinion. This scrutiny has been directed on the proceedings, Since the beginning of the proceedings, this surveillance has been present throughout the entire process. The federal government has accused Mangione with murder during interstate stalking, and further claims have been filed against him that could result in the possibility of the death penalty being imposed against him. Also, the federal government has submitted more allegations against him. In order to create their case, the prosecution has leveraged a manifesto that was written by Mangione, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence that establishes a connection between him and the murder. For the purpose of establishing their case, each and every one of these resources has been implemented. While all of this is going on, his legal team has been working hard to refute the allegations that have been brought against him. In order to accomplish this, they have been throwing doubt on the credibility of various pieces of evidence and asserting that the use of terrorism statutes in this particular case is not appropriate. Others see Mangione as a representative of the conflicts that are seething beneath the surface of society, while others see him as a cold-blooded killer. Both of these perspectives are held by certain people. Some individuals believe that Mangione is a symbol of the tensions that are occurring. The case has caused a passionate debate all throughout the country, with some citizens interpreting him as a representative of their displeasure with the way things are going. The criticism that Mangione has leveled on corporate America and the part it plays in maintaining economic injustice has even been welcomed with compassion from certain individuals. This is due to the fact that corporate America is a contributor to the ongoing existence of economic inequity. The many social media platforms have evolved into a battlefield, which has resulted in perspectives that are diametrically opposed to one another about the operations of Mangione, as well as the more general concerns that are currently being debated. At the same time as there are many who believe that the assassin was a martyr for a cause, there are also those who believe that he was nothing more than a victim of murder. There is a sizable population that subscribes to both of these points of view. The question that this case presents is exceedingly alarming in terms of the way that the societal landscape of the United States is moving. This question lies at the heart of the case. The nation has been forced to confront unsettling truths about its economic structures, its treatment of the marginalized, and the potential for radicalization in a world that is becoming increasingly divided as a result of the assassination of a corporate leader, the subsequent manhunt, and the ideological motivations that drove the act. These events have occurred as a result of the political and ideological motivations that drove the act. As a consequence of the fact that the globe is growing more and more divided, this has come about. People have been made aware of the fact that there are alternatives to resorting to violence or extremism that may be utilized in order to redress the structural injustices that exist in the world. These difficult circumstances have been placed upon people from all walks of life, including politicians, activists, and regular people. They have been obliged to address these difficulties. After the passing of Thompson, the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, has issued an appeal to the entire nation, imploring people to consider the significance of both justice and healing in the wake of the tragedy that has befallen the city. Not only has he voiced his condemnation of the violent acts, but he has also urged for a more extensive investigation into the social and economic causes that are the key motivating factors for manifesting themselves in such a manner. Adams is of the opinion that the passing of Thompson is a heartbreaking but all too accurate indication of a far more pervasive issue within the community. This is a tragic indication, but it couldn't be more accurate. Adams highlighted throughout his public speech the importance of empathizing with other people, engaging in discourse, and making a serious effort to solve the basic problems that contribute to social unrest. He also underlined the need to engage in conversation. In addition to that, he emphasized how important it was to conduct the action, not only as a one-of-a-kind occurrence, but also as a component of a larger social discussion concerning power, privilege, and the implications of unrestrained corporate supremacy. It is entirely feasible that the killing of Brian Thompson may continue to have repercussions for a considerable amount of time in the future. Additionally, It is quite plausible that these effects will continue to have an effect on the planet in the future. According to Mangione, the act may have been an expression of his convictions. However, for the rest of the world, it has become a clear warning of the risks of radicalization, the fragility of social order, and the ever-present undercurrents of anger and frustration that have the potential to explode into violence at any moment. Both of these things are a clear warning. These two facts should serve as a clear warning to you. As a result of his experience, the nation is compelled to confront the unsettling truth of a society that is deeply divided and to contemplate the more widespread problems that are at play, which have the potential to drive individuals to the verge of insanity. His story is one that compels members of the nation to face the reality of the situation. In spite of the fact that these disparities and divisions continue to have an impact on the lives of millions of people, the case continues to function as both a cautionary tale and a call to action, proposing that the United States of America take action to address these problems. Would you like it? Hit the like button and subscribe to our channels for more interesting and informative videos.